and welcome to Best Laid Plans. This is your host, Sarah Hart-Unger, and this is a podcast where we talk all things planning and planning adjacent. Today is a planning adjacent episode for you. I interview Skye Waterson of Unconventional Organization, and she is an ADHD strategist. She hosts a podcast all about ADHD, and she's an expert in helping entrepreneurs and executives and others who deal with ADHD or even just ADHD symptoms. So I have a really fun conversation with her up ahead. This has been a topic that's been requested fairly frequently by listeners, so I really hope you enjoy it. I also just want to remind listeners that my 2026 courses launched for registration this past week. I released the links to newsletter subscribers for my October 1st newsletter, and this week I will have the links live on my website as well under the shoebox.com/courses. There are 2 courses that you might want to consider. One of them is for planning your year, and that's called Best Laid Plans, Planning 2026. That is a structured planning session, or really sessions. It's 4 hours of planning content held in 2 2-hour sessions, plus a 1-hour mid-year check-in that's held in June that will really help you plan out your year in detail. If you've wanted to do a planning retreat but struggled to kind of put it together on your own, this is your planning retreat in a box, or with me live and experiencing the joy of sitting there with your workbook and thinking through all of the pieces that you want in your year. That's going to be held in December and January with a check-in in June. The other course that I am releasing or opening access to is Planning by Season for 2026. Planning by Season is my seasonal planning course. There are 10 sessions held throughout the year, and it's a smaller group so we get to know each other a little bit better. I've really gotten to have so much fun following along the participants and some of the goals they set and now seeing them come to fruition later in the year. But basically, I lead participants through guided seasonal planning through an hour-long session every season. And then there's also a more discussion-based check-in each season where we review progress and then we have topical conversations that pertain to the season as well. That also comes with a workbook. I don't think I mentioned it, but there's a beautiful PDF workbook for each of these courses. I actually used my Planning by Season workbook myself all year last year and loved it. So yeah, I am really excited that people continue to love these courses, and I'm so excited to be able to continue to offer them in 2026. I definitely feel like this is the best iteration yet, since I continue to learn from the feedback I receive and just what seems to be working and what doesn't among my audiences. So again, thank you if you've participated in the past. And thank you if you're considering joining for next year. And all those links can be found at theshoebox.com/courses. And with that, I'm going to introduce Skye, our interview today. Well, I am so excited to welcome Skye Waterson to the show. Skye Waterson is from Unconventional Organization, and she's an ADHD strategist, host of a podcast in the ADHD space, and an expert on building systems that help entrepreneurs and executives with ADHD or suspected ADHD scale their businesses. So she is a true expert, and I am honored to have you on the show. Welcome, Skye.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh, and you are here, clarify, all the way from?
New Zealand. Yeah.
Yes, technology always amazes me. I can see Skye crystal clear, even though she is talking to me from the next day, which is kind of wild. So I have some questions for you, but I honestly kind of forgot to ask, to include in my questions, the background. What got you so excited about working with people in the ADHD space? And how did your business get started?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I will say I work mostly with people in the US, a couple of people in Australia. I love living in New Zealand though. And what got me really excited is my vision and my goal is to empower people with unconventional brains to find financial freedom. When I was an academic, I found out at the beginning of my PhD that I had ADHD. It was a huge shift for me in understanding some of the struggles that I'd had. I'd burned out pretty hard after my master's. I left academia and worked as a cashier in a bakery. I thought I'd never come back because it was so tricky managing what I didn't know were my symptoms at the time. And so when I learned about it, that was when I really came in and said, okay, I have struggled with financial freedom because of my ADHD, and that's been a struggle for me because academia is great, but it's not very secure. And so I want to help other people learn how to take care of themselves and how to get financial freedom for themselves and their families, even if they have ADHD. And so now I work primarily with executives, business owners, and people who are on that journey.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk about what you teach to others, but we do a segment on this podcast called Planner Piece, where people often will submit, like, this is what I'm doing right now. And in a nutshell, they'll kind of describe their system for keeping organized, what kind of tools they use, what kind of rituals they might have around organizing longer term goals. And I would love it, Skye, if you could share your current version of Planner Piece. How are you currently kind of keeping things organized and doing your planning now?
Yeah. So I'm going to make some people quite happy because I use Notion. I know there's a lot of Notion users. I will say everything I teach is agnostic to a particular application. It can be used anywhere, including paper. But I have a wonderful team who builds databases in Notion. And so I have my daily planners in there, what I'm doing. And then for the bigger picture stuff around what does this business look like? Where is it going? I like to plan and create something called the SOP pipeline in Miro. So I use Miro for that so that we can see what is going on. We can really see the business and how it's running, which is a reason a lot of people struggle. And then the actual plans and details go in Notion.
Okay. Interesting. How long did it take you to build up? Because I feel like Notion, people struggle with the learning curve, although I know there are many templates available, and I'm guessing you probably offer some. But yeah, how long did it take you to get your system actually working for you?
It took a while. And I will say for me, the biggest thing was I had a team member. So I have somebody on our team who builds systems and processes for us. And she really wanted to use Notion. And I highly recommend this if you have anybody in your team who is an EA or an assistant for you. I said, okay, you can use it. You can set it up if that's what you want to do. I can see the reasons why it's going to happen. But I don't want to set anything up. So for a really long time, I was just in Notion, but didn't know how to use it. And then slowly I became more familiar with it. I built my own systems, and that's really where it came in. And for me, the switch really came when Notion introduced Notion AI, and it had the recordings and the database searching. And that was really why we decided to go all in on using it.
That makes sense. And in terms of using it for your own personal planning, you said something important, which was that the tools you're agnostic of the tools, which we 100% talk about on Best Laid Plans. I mean, I teach more on the lines of personal planning, and I love planners and I talk about them all the time. And yet I think it's so much more about the processes and rituals than the specific tools that someone chooses to use. So what are some of your systems that when you say you do your daily planning in Notion, what does that actually look like? Do you have a ritual you do each day, each week? Give us some details.
Yeah. So I have a system that one of the great things about what I do is I do everything that I teach. So everything that I teach is based on research into how our brains work, if we have ADHD symptoms, as well as what's worked for me and what's worked for a lot of my clients. And so the first system that I teach is how to prioritize when you wake up every morning and it feels like you have 100 things. They're all urgent, they're all important, and you have no time. And when I do this process, and I'll take you through it now, I've had people go from, I swear I have 200 things to do today, you're never going to convince me otherwise, and then all of them have less than 5. So it's the process that we go through. I recently made a GBT that walks you through this step by step. So if you want to get it and walk through this process, you can just DM me plans on Instagram at Unconventional Organization. I'll give you access to that.
What is a GBT for the uninformed?
It's an AI. So it's a little AI that will be like, hey, like, what are you struggling with? And it will take you through, and it will sort of spit out exactly what you need, and you can put it in whatever system you want to use. So
a little productivity chatbot. Okay, that is awesome.
Yeah.
And
I love making them.
In a nutshell, you said you were going to tell me what that prioritization process looked like. So what are your steps? What is that bot going to tell you to do?
So the very first thing that I want you to do is I want you to do a brain dump of what is in your head. Every task, work, home, every single task that's in your head. Don't look at your email. Don't look at your old lists. We just want to get it out of your head. We want to get your working memory a little bit looser. We want to start being able to have a little bit of that creativity. So that's the first thing we do, is we do that brain dump. Then from there, we look at the brain dump and we say, okay, what is it on this list that I have to do today, or there will be a negative external consequence for tomorrow? So 24-hour tasks. And I have a little metaphor to help with this, which is if your day went sideways and you ended up in a waiting room, maybe for yourself, maybe for someone else, and that was your day, you knew you were going to be stuck there the whole day. What was the thing that you would still be trying to do on your phone, or you would be messaging someone and saying, hey, I'm not going to be prepared for this tomorrow because I don't have time to do it today. That is a truly urgent task. Nothing else counts. And we can talk about what to do with important tasks and other tasks, but the first thing we need to know is what is truly urgent? Because if everything feels truly urgent, then nothing is truly urgent. And with ADHD brains specifically, we really struggle with this idea of what is urgent.
That makes so much sense. And I have some family members with ADHD, and I 100% can see what you are saying here. Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
What challenges, in addition to prioritization, which is huge and can impact everything, I can see that. What are some other challenges that you see commonly in ADHD? And I'm going to name one. I'm sure there's also others. But in addition to anything else you have in mind, I'd love to hear about procrastination.
Yeah, so procrastination is a big one. And there's 3 reasons we struggle with starting tasks. It's too boring, it's too confusing, it's emotionally vulnerable. The other one is time blindness. We can really overestimate how long we can do it. We could swear we can do it in a day, half a day. Realistically, it's probably 2 or 3 times that amount of time. And then the other one is transition time. If we have a workplace that is very much, meeting, traveling, it can be very hard. We're not going to be able to sit down and actually do deep work without these blocks of time. We need those things chunked and shifted in order to really get going on the most important things. And that's what I teach, is like how to focus, how to do the most important things that are actually going to grow momentum in your business. Because for so many people, they just spiral for years and they don't actually build that momentum.
So would your answer, when you talked about the reasons that people procrastinate, be like addressing those one at a time, how to make it less boring?
Yes. Yeah. So when we talk about it, we have a step into focus routine. And basically what we do is it takes you from, I don't want to do this task, no way, no how, no thank you, to actually doing it in about 15 to 20 minutes by addressing each of those. So if we take just the first one of the things we know from the research is that with ADHD, it appears, neuroscientists are still arguing about this, that we are not getting a boost of motivation, positive feeling, dopamine, essentially, that neurotypicals are getting when they start a task. It's not connecting to the fact that you're going to get a reward at the end. So if you're more traditional, you'll sit down and you'll do a task and your brain will go, yes, that's awesome. You're going to feel great at the end of this. So have some of that feel great feeling now. When you're ADHD, your brain is like, this is super boring. I don't know why we're doing this. And it won't give you that feeling.
And how can you combat that?
Yeah. So one of the things we want to do very simply is the idea of a reward at the end is really great if you have a traditional brain. It's not so great if you don't. So what we want to do to combat that is we actually want to give ourselves a reward for sitting down and starting the task specifically. And so what that looks like, it's very specific, is that we want you to have some kind of reward for sitting down, usually at your desk, with the intention of starting the task. So for some people, and side note, it can't be something you're going to get distracted on. So there's a little bit of experimentation here. A lot of us already do this. We'll get a coffee. We'll sit down with our coffee, but think about other senses that you have, touch, taste, sight, sound, smell. If you say, okay, I have to, an extreme version is if you say, okay, well, I have to sit down, I have to fill out this form, but I'm going to sit in a hammock. I'm going to have a really nice drink. I'm going to listen to some music. Maybe I'll grab a book and I'll read a couple of pages first, and then I'll get into it. I'll write down exactly what I'm going to do, which is how we support the working memory struggles next. That feels like a vibe. It feels a lot more doable.
I love that. That's so interesting. And at least one of my kids does like to ask for relaxing music when they're doing homework. And I'm always like, that's going to distract you more. But maybe they're just instinctively looking for that reward. So that's super interesting.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, and then I want to go back to something you just said because I was fascinated by it. Be right back. Today's episode is brought to you with support from Green Chef. I love fall energy, like the fresh start of back to school, plus all of that delicious fall food. Warm, homey flavors just make everything feel comforting. Plus, with the new seasonal energy, it's the perfect time to reset and bring healthy habits back into focus. Green Chef can help you do just that, even if your season is packed with school festivities and events. Green Chef's meals are made up of real, clean ingredients, and they help you build lasting healthy habits without the hassle. With 80-plus dietitian-approved weekly meal options, Green Chef makes it easy to find meals that fit your lifestyle. Pick from Mediterranean, gluten-free, plant-based, and protein-heavy. There's even a gut and brain health option and calorie-smart choices too. They really are family-friendly, and my kids are always so excited for our Green Chef dinners. Make this fall your healthiest yet with Green Chef. Head to greenchef.com/50bestlaid and use code 50bestlaid to get 50% off your first month, then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. That's code 50bestlaid, as in 50bestlaid, at greenchef.com/50bestlaid. Today's episode is brought to you with support from Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. That's why you should say yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for $15 per month. Mint Mobile's plans start at $15 per month, and there are no unexpected overages or hidden fees. All Mint Mobile plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. So ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/BLP. That's mintmobile.com/BLP. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 per month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's episode comes to you with support from iExcel. The autumn season is in full swing, and iExcel helps keep your homeschool lessons or school enrichment structured and steady, whether you're following a set curriculum or creating your own. I personally love the simplicity that iExcel offers. I don't have to dig through endless resources. iExcel is organized by grade and topic, so I can jump right into what each child needs. My kids have been using iExcel for years, and I really trust it to help solidify concepts and meet them where they are. Just like each leaf changes at its own pace, each child learns differently. iExcel adapts so kids can move ahead when they're ready or revisit the topic until it truly clicks. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get iExcel now. And Best Laid Plans listeners can get an exclusive 20% off iExcel membership when they sign up today at iexcel.com/plans. Visit iexcel.com/plans to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. Okay, we are back. And when we were talking about struggles that people sometimes have in getting through their task list or getting things done with ADHD, you mentioned writing things down before you do them or something like that. What did you mean by that? Because I guess that sounds very bullet journal-esque, and I can see how that might be appealing, but why does that specifically help people that struggle with ADHD?
Yeah. So if you've ever been in, English class, you've had a professor who said, hey, before you write the essay, you should write an outline, because if you don't, you're going to get stuck, you're going to get lost halfway through. With ADHD, we can do that with almost any task. And so what that means is sometimes someone will come into the room, they'll break our concentration. Honestly, anything can break our concentration. So chances are it's going to happen. And what we want to do instead is we actually want to go ahead and give ourselves a little recipe for exactly what we're going to do during this period of time. It also helps with some of that time blindness. So I recommend just a Post-it note, something you can throw away, but you can use any kind of digital physical piece of paper. And you're going to go through and you're going to say, okay, well, what is it that I need to do? So if you need to write a report, we don't just want to say, write the report on here, because your brain's going to look at that and go, I don't know what that is. Should we do something more fun? And you want to go in and say, okay, I need to open this document. I need to summarize this piece. I need to find this information. Sometimes you'll be like, oh, actually, and then that's it. That's all I can do, because then I have to wait for a response or something like that. With ADHD, our working memory is it's a little not as good. Our long-term memory can actually sometimes be better, interestingly enough, for things that we're interested in. But it's helpful for us to break things down in that recipe way, because then we're just following the steps. It's a lot easier. There's a lot less resistance. And if we get distracted, we can just come back, tick off what we've done so far and keep going.
That is awesome. I am already thinking about how I could put this into action for some of the people I love. So that is great. So speaking of the people we love, let's say you're listening to this. And actually, I find that everything you've said would be applicable whether you have ADHD or not. So these tips are universal. But at the same time, let's say you're listening to this and you have a child or a partner with ADHD, but you don't struggle yourself. How are the ways you can best support those in your life?
I think the best way to support them is to understand that when you have ADHD, one of the struggles you have, it's not the only thing that affects your brain when you have ADHD, is around the dopamine. So if we're talking about stimulation, being understimulated, being overstimulated, that is a real struggle. Some people will struggle to do something, but if you put music on, like you mentioned before, they will struggle less. There is some research to indicate that people with ADHD do benefit more from certain kinds of music and that kind of thing. So what that means, generally speaking, is if you're supporting somebody who has ADHD and they're struggling to do something, it can be helpful to encourage them to do it in a different way or in a different environment. I've seen people have huge unlocks by writing it down on a physical piece of paper because they needed to be able to see it. And that can be more of a sensory processing conversation. It's not specifically related to ADHD, but often it's connected. The joys of comorbidity. Or it can be something along the lines of, hey, well, why don't you do this in a coffee shop? Or why don't you do this outside? These are the things that can be really helpful. When people are trying to do things in the same traditional way, and you're giving the same traditional advice, just do it in an hour, find a quiet place. This person environment fit problem that you're having can often be the source of the problem and not the person. So it's about understanding that they're just a different kind of puzzle, and we just don't have as many of the pieces or the box to know how to fit them together. But those things do fit together. People I work with all the time will go from completely distracted, confused, going around in circles to growing a successful business sustainably.
So just because the sort of traditional tactics do not work doesn't mean that there aren't tactics that won't work beautifully. Like you just have to find the right ones.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, so cool. So let's say you do have ADHD, or maybe you don't, and you're just feeling totally overwhelmed with your entire system. You're like, I want to burn it down. New Year's coming. I am struggling. What are just a couple of things that you might tell people to start with?
Yeah. Well, that's a really great question. And I will say I do work a lot with people who are more self-diagnosed these days because they resonate with the symptoms because, like you said, happens to us all. In terms of what to do, I think the first thing I would say is you're going to need to look at basically the idea that you're probably working about as hard as you can. You're probably, a lot of times people will tell themselves, I just need to push through. I just need to try harder. And I tell you this from a place of absolute burnout. Before I burnt out after my master's, I was that person. I was working 3 jobs. I wasn't sleeping. I was drinking a lot of caffeine, and it doesn't lead to a good place. Usually what you want to understand is, hey, I am working as hard as I possibly can. It doesn't look like much right now because the systems I'm using aren't working. If we can adjust the systems, it's going to be easier. I'm not going to have to put in more effort. A lot of people think that that's the case. The second thing I would say is it's going to be more fun. Believe it or not, pushing a giant rock up a hill in the wrong direction, which is how it can often feel when you're trying to use systems that don't work for your brain, is not fun. And doing systems that do work for your brain is a lot more fun. So my recommendation for you, more than anything, is that mindset shift. You don't have to work harder. It can feel more natural. And the biggest problem I have often is getting people to really understand and accept that, because they're like, no, I have to do things the way I was taught, and they can get really stuck doing that.
Totally makes sense. Any other takeaways that you want to share with our listeners today? Maybe either those with ADHD or those supporting others that are dealing with it?
It's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of it, I would say, is, and this is a planning podcast, so maybe this is specific, it's like before you jump to a different planner, consider why the one you're using isn't working for you. Because sometimes one of the things that happens a lot with ADHD is we will get a lot of boost of stimulation from switching to a new system, and then that will reduce over time once we've set it up. And sometimes it can be fun to find a new system and do a new thing and get that little boost. Like it's, fun. But if you are in a position where you're trying to really seriously figure out what's working, my recommendation is always look at what are you currently using. One of the ways I get to do this with people is I'll say, well, where are you putting your doctor's appointments? Because usually we have somewhere we're putting our doctor's appointments. And sometimes the system that we use is going to be the most basic system because it's actually the one that works across the most places in the most different ways. And it isn't necessarily going to be a different app.
Totally makes sense. We talk about that all the time. It can be fun to switch planners. Just make sure you know why you're doing it. And if you're just doing it for fun, that is awesome. But if you think it's going to solve all of your problems, it's the way you're using the planner or your systems that's probably needs delving into. And you probably need to check out some of the resources from our wonderful guests today. So Skye, thank you so much. Tell our listeners where they can find more from you, including I'm going to call it the productivity chatbot.
Yeah, I love that. I should change the name. Yeah, so basically you can find me at Unconventional Organization. You can find my podcast, ADHD Skills Lab, where we talk about research and strategies to help you run your business with ADHD. And if you want the little productivity skills bot that is going to help you out with going from overwhelmed to focused, you can just DM me plans at Unconventional Organization and we'll send it right to you.
And that's organization with an S, you guys, for those of you in the United States. Don't spell it wrong. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I was so glad to be able to chat with Skye on the show today. Such an important topic. And again, one that's been requested a number of times. So I was really glad to have such an expert. If you have questions for Skye, I didn't mention this on the show, but I can most likely contact her. So just leave them in the show notes, which is at theshoebox.com. And if there are questions, I will direct her to those notes so she can go ahead and answer them. If you have future guest suggestions, feel free to send them my way. I have a little bit of a queue growing. You guys know I do about one guest per month. I have another one coming up soon, but I'm always interested in who you think would be an amazing guest for the podcast. So please keep those recommendations coming. All right, I'll be back next week with some more planning fun with your October Q&A.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.